is the conversation where men have to start, or people in general have to start having a conversation, because men do not care for a woman's opinion in most sporting events. There's some good women out there, but by and large, there's really not that many. And the ones that are platformed on these television shows, like again, Malika Andrews, I don't know why she's on. I don't know why she's still on TV, because there's a there's a growing sentiment that Malika Andrews has a problem with black men. I know she's going to say she doesn't, and I know a bunch of other black men are going to go out there and say like, "Hey, I support her. I don't have a problem with her." Now I think you're probably sleeping with her, even though she's married to a white dude. So now I think there's an issue though, because with and outside of Malika Andrews, I mean, I'm trying to think of another situation. I mean, Stephen A went viral with some women commentators about the WNBA, but again, that's Stephen A included in that. So, and Jamel Hill, she only goes viral for race baiting, and then she's been kicked. She pretty much can't even work in the industry anymore. So, why isn't why are people pushing for something that is very known? Like, you don't have to add a woman. You can interview women, and if they, if they show that they test well with the audience, fine. But you're losing audience members, and then the men that you have on there, when they do have a problem, when they do have an issue, they can't even say anything because they're going to be protected. Stephen A has been suspended a couple times because he's had a conversation. I thought Stephen A was going to get suspended over that whole WNBA thing, which really was a controversy. It was just a conversation. And one of the things that came out of that was Stephen A said, look, I opened the doors for a lot of people that are going to come after me. And for some of these women thinking that, no, you didn't. I opened my own door. No, you didn't. Stephen A and people like Skip Bayless have laid down the foundation for a lot of women. It's not just those two. There's some other people in there as well, too. But for most people out there, without Stephen A and Skip Bayless, they're not getting as far as they have or where they get. And Stephen A has put a lot of people on. So I don't want to hear anything about, I don't agree with Stephen A on some of his, political ideologies. But for the most part, when it comes to opening the door for a lot of women, Stephen A has definitely been that person to do that, but these women have created issues thinking that, they have worked their way into it. Joy Taylor doesn't have the experience. She was a radio host. The only reason she was only relevant because of her brother who played in the NFL. That's it. There's nothing else there. Joy is good to look at, and Jason Whitlock said they tried to put her on her show. He didn't want to have her. And then he tried to force her on Skip's show. And Skip was like, no, I don't want her. And he's like, just do a favor for me. Look how that freaking worked out. You got a whole thing. Your whole empire is about to come crashing down because an executive couldn't keep his dick in his pants. And then you got Skip Bayless paying grab ass with some hairstylists.
So you said something earlier that we need to add some context to. You said that we generally don't care about women's opinions when it comes to sports. But I think it's important that people understand why that is because they're going to just assume that you're being misogynistic because they don't
Yeah.
want to do a
Yeah,
deep
you always
dive in the
got to break it
conversation.
down for the normies.
So I don't fully agree with you on that. There are some women out there who have respectable opinions and do very solid sports analysis, but they're not on Fox Sports or ESPN. I've seen some solid women on Cam and Mace's show that can break down sports with the best of them. I'll start
Yeah.
there. But for the other ones, particularly the ones you see on ESPN and Fox Sports, the reason why nobody wants to hear you, A, because at least in football anyway, you never played. And B, every talking point that you have for the most part, not all the time, but most of the time, it comes back to victimhood. Look at
Yes.
all the people that talk about WNBA stuff over and over again. It's victim, victim, victim. We need this. Y'all not doing that. This is how we fix it. And it's like, ain't nobody trying to hear that.
Right.
Somebody who gets up at 6 a.m. and works 12 hours a day and got to get it out the mud for themselves, they're not trying to hear that victim stuff.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. Men and women code switch around each other. So in essence, what you're doing is you can't be yourself. If I'm sitting and talking with TR on the phone, we don't filter anything and we don't sugarcoat anything. But I also know that if I'm in a room with a whole bunch of the fellas on a sports team and a woman walks into the room, the entire conversation and the energy of that room changes. So in essence, women, what you are doing is you're taking a man out of his character because he knows that he can't talk to you the same way he talks to everybody else. And
Yeah.
it changes the conversation and it makes it worse because now he's walking on eggshells and sugarcoating and hoping that he doesn't piss you off and you go to HR.
Yeah.
That's why it's hard to incorporate women into these spaces. Now, I think it'll get better over time, but that's a point that y'all need to soak in and take seriously.
Yeah.
You will never ever have a man who is fully himself around you because he can't talk to you the way he talks to other men.
Yeah.
Period.
And that's a good point though, because one of the hosts, former hosts, was Jenny Taft. And even with Jenny Taft, she's alleged to have, or well, per Jason Whitlock, there were some conversations between, or it was the rumor was Jenny Taft, who was married at the time, might have been, having a different relationship with Skip, or I mean, sorry, not Skip, but Shannon Sharp. And so when you look at like there was Jenny Taft had like kind of a couple on air spat with Skip, and she went to HR about it. Like Jenny Taft, nobody, I mean, and Jenny Taft, she was actually decent. She didn't really like try to put herself or her opinions in some of these conversations, but she crossed the line a few times, and ain't nobody coming, and nobody was watching Undisputed for Jenny Taft. No one watches. I mean, even with First Take, Molly Karam only got that job because of Skip leaving, and nobody's ever said like, hey, Molly Karam's had a great take. So when it comes to like people listening, and people say Molly Karam is good looking, and then she went viral because of whole Jalen. What was the dude named Jalen Rose? Yeah, she was
Yeah.
married to him and he got a divorce or whatever.
Yeah.
So those are the conversations that people like men have to start code switching on. Like you're absolutely right. I mean, even when they were like pushing women into men's locker room, first of all, as a man, as if your wife or your fiance or whatever is going into the locker room with a bunch of athletes, and some of these athletes are not fully clothed. Some of these athletes, they will still try to steal your girl, sleep with your girl. You're okay with that? Like, I don't give a damn about the whole insecurity thing. Why would you allow your wife, like, this is what she wants to do? All right. Well, when old boy's clapping her cheeks, you remember you asked for that. But again, women just don't belong in the locker room like that, because the men, the one thing that, or I guess you hit on a lot of points though, but this is the other thing too. Men start simping out when a woman gets in there into the locker room, or you invite a woman to like into a big group. Men start to simp out so hard, it becomes a competition. And I kind of believe that's kind of what happened here with the whole Skip Bayless and with the whole Shannon Sharp thing, because it's alleged that Shannon, or she said in the lawsuit, that Skip was jealous of Shannon sleeping with his hairstylist, and it may have turned into like some type of rivalry or some bet. I don't think Skip was really trying to give up the box, which we should probably talk about that real quick as well too. But at the end of the day, you women, if you want to be in this space, just understand that if you're good looking, people are going to think you got there because of your good looks, and it's on you to say like, hey, I know I'm good looking, but I'm gonna be a professional. And then you want to go to HR. Well, he says something illicit or something he was supposed to say to me. This is a space. Men should have to be men in those spaces in the sports world. They should have to filter themselves. People in general. I understand if you're in like some professional, office environment. Yeah, you got to keep it clean. But if you're working in those spaces where you're talking about sports and men issues, or really not even men issues, but sport issues, yeah, people are going to say things that you may not like, but you got to go along with it. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I've beat this horse too many times. Ultimately, though, this is a reality check for Joy. And I almost forgot Joe Budden went at her not too long ago, less than a year ago, because she was on some platform saying that all men wanted her. Which,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's probably true. Most men who are heterosexual, and some women too, by the way, probably want her.
sure, yeah.
But again, women, you have to understand that when you enter a room full of men, it changes the energy and the dynamic, and that's why you'll always struggle to some degree
Well,
with being in the sports world. But here's the other thing I want to say: if you ask somebody like this why it didn't work out or why they failed, you already know what their answer is going to be: misogyny and racism. It can't always be that all the time.
sure,
It just can't, and that's what it always comes to. We know your playbook, and it's getting tired and wore out.
yeah. Here's the